Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask on CYC. So, they say that having a pet is good for the human psychology, that they have the ability to love you more than their own life. I have a friend of mine who was once standing in his backyard who accidentally choked on a sandwich. His dog started crying and kept touching his feet until he was okay. But is it enough to go and take that step and to buy one of these lovable companions without being prepared for it? Tonight we're about to find out how prepared you need to be before you take that step. So I have with me a vet, and I want you to have the opportunity to ask questions. As always, I always prep quick questions to get the show running, but your questions is more valuable to us. So I want you to ask the questions. I want you to ask, seek and knock. And the phone number to tonight's show is 0416 551 292. Please send us a text or give us a call and speak to the vet on the show tonight. So I'd like to introduce you to our vet, Andrew Gendi. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Not only you're a vet, but you've been a friend of mine who's been giving me advice for the past 2 years since I bought my dog.
Of course.
And I've been very thankful for that.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'd like to share your advice and opinions with the audience on tonight's show.
I'm here to help.
It's a privilege having you on the show. So I want to start off the show tonight by asking the quick question, the number one question. So how do one family know what pet is suitable for their household and whether they're ready to buy this pet?
Right. I think that question is kind of specific to each individual family. Okay. Different families differ in terms of their activity level, their availability in terms of how much time they can spend at home with the pet. Okay, and that can influence a myriad of factors. Okay, if we're talking about a pet in general, not so much a dog. Okay, there's two main categories. Okay, whether you're a dog person or a cat person. Dogs are more needy for attention. Okay, dogs crave affection. What they do is dogs are extremely loyal companions. All right, and what tends to happen is, as you know, with your own dog, he will go crazy just to be with you. And again, that goes further in terms of dog breeds. Some breeds like to, go running. Like my Kelpie, for example, he can run all day long. Okay, he won't stop. Whereas a small Maltese Terrier, for example, is a little bit more quieter and can be a lot more well accompanied for in-house living.
Okay, so let me interrupt for a second. Let's create a hypothetical. I'm a father and a wife, and I have 3 kids. One age of 12, one age of 10, and one age of 3. What pet would you recommend for my family?
It's not that easy. So I think let's go with your scenario. If, say, for example, you are a father with 3 kids, how much time are you going to, spend with this dog? Okay, who's going to walk it and for how long? Is it going to be predominantly indoors or an outdoor? Is it a small breed or a large breed? I think ideally, and the other things that you need to take into account is how would you deal with the dog shedding a lot of fur? A lot of people who acquire pets don't understand that dogs shed and so do cats. And then they're surprised. They're like, what is all this fur? So hypothetically, I think the best scenario to ask is this. Are you a high energy household or a low energy household? High energy, then you can get medium breed dogs like Staffies and Kelpies and cattle dogs and Huskies. They're high energy dogs. And if, say for example, a low energy household takes a high energy dog on, it's World War III. The dog will start vandalizing their house, and that's how dogs end up in shelters, unfortunately.
So how about the size of the house? Does that determine what breed we can get?
Look, It kind of does. So I mean, if you live in an apartment block, having a German Shepherd, for example, is going to be, it's not going to be the best thing for you. Number one, they shed a lot of fur. They need, a playing ground. All right. So they need a bit of a backyard to, at least when you're outside the house, they can go for a bit of a run. And the other thing is they need a place to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? But if definitely size of living, it correlates to the pet you should get, but it's not it's not a definitive.
Sure. So let's say someone goes through the checklist and they're ready for a pet, whether it's a dog, a cat, or even a goldfish, for example. So where can one go to buy these? Can they buy them off a newspaper, from a pet store?
Okay, my advice as a veterinarian will be reputable breeders, number one. Okay, the reason I recommend reputable breeders is that at least then you see the father, the mother, you know where the dogs have been raised, and you can tell that the dogs have been socialized from day one, meaning that they've come into contact with other dogs and they've come into contact with other humans, so they no longer have that fear factor. I would always, puppy farms are the worst place you can get a dog, from my opinion. Puppy farms are pretty much, for those who don't know what a puppy farm is, it's pretty much a person who has multiple caged breeding females, okay, and he services them all, and they just continuously cycle. Like he just breeds it. It's his living. But the conditions in which they're raised are very, very poor. So these animals tend to be on hard cement, okay? They don't even clean the ground. They just go out and hose out the poo. And so these dogs become extremely hard to train in terms of bathroom training, in-house training. They usually have some social, and behavioral abnormalities, or, I mean, you can crack into them, but it's just hard work, For those who rescue pets, definitely going to an animal shelter. I mean, I got one of my dogs from an animal shelter. Best decision ever, And these dogs are pretty much, like I mentioned earlier, a high energy dog in a low energy household, or vice versa, a low energy dog in a high energy household, and they can no longer keep up. So definitely, those are my two main places of acquiring a pet.
I remember when I bought my dog, I first met the parents.
Yeah.
And seeing how they were friendly and they were jumping on me and they were licking me, and I saw that the parents were really social. It made me more comfortable buying the dog.
Definitely. You don't want to get, I mean, usually when the parents are aggressive, okay, a lot of that, the stress and the fear gets transferred to the pups, and that's why they grow up. I mean, it doesn't mean they're 100% going to be aggressive, but it just means that they're more likely to be.
Okay. So let's talk about pet insurance. Is it necessary?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. One of the most common things that I see as a vet is dogs that have had medical emergencies. One of the worst things it actually happened to me this year. New Year's Day, I was working on call, and I got two emergencies, same family, okay, and they were out of pocket on New Year's Day, $5,000. It's just. Pet insurance, I mean, is bad when you don't use it, but it's a lifesaver when you need it. And I would definitely recommend it for that unforeseen circumstance.
Okay. So just a question for the audience members who already have a pet, for example, a dog or a cat. When are they too old to stop training them?
Oh, look, again, there's no such thing as a dog that's too old. It's specific to the dog, and again, it's specific to the breed of the dog. Some dogs are just stubborn, okay, but they can always be tapped into. And I mean, there are behavior training courses that you can take. There are people who you can go and acquire knowledge from. I'm not a big fan of Caesar, the dog whisperer. I'm not a big fan of him because he likes to, put negative reinforcement a lot, and sometimes that makes the dog snap. I feel like dogs will react to you when you train them slowly over a long period of time rather than punish them over and over and over again. They'll do it out of fear, but they're more likely to snap thereafter. Again, so it's definitely, I train my dog. My dog, I have an 8-year-old and I have a 3-year-old, and I train them both till today, and they learn new tricks. So I don't see why persistence can't yield results.
Okay. Just a reminder to our viewers, please send us your questions to 0416 551 292, or you want to give us a call and speak to the vet tonight, call us and you'll get your answers on tonight's show. So moving on. So having a pet, it's a long time commitment. We're looking about a good 15 years.
Definitely, yeah. One of the things is this: before you acquire a pet, like we see it a lot in the veterinary industry. We see it day in, day out when people acquire a pet and then don't realize, the size of the commitment that they've taken on. Dogs, for example, if you have even a low, low activity dog in your household, you need to walk him at least twice a week for 30 minutes. All right, that's at the bare minimum. If you have something like mine or your dog, at least every day, 30 minutes. And you need to spend time with your pet. I feel really bad for pets that are just kept in their backyard, don't get any attention. Not even a pat, just food chucked out, and then just it's not. Picture yourself living that way. It's like a jail. But cats are more self-sufficient. Okay, if you can't take that kind of commitment, all right, where you need to spend time, show affection, then what you can do is you can acquire a cat. Cats litter train themselves pretty much. They're affectionate when they want to be, and they can entertain themselves without you necessarily being there all the time. So they're definitely easier to maintain. As well, are a little bit easier to maintain, but they do make quite a bit of a mess. And the thing that I don't like about birds the most is when they're sick, they're really sick. They will mask their signs till the point they're just about to fall over.
Okay. I've got one more question to ask you in the general area before we move on to more specific questions.
Definitely.
Okay, so meds, human meds. Can we give human meds to animals?
Look, there are some meds that are definitely not. For example, Panadol, Nurofen. The like will kill your dog. Dog, cat, it'll kill them. So in that sense, no. But we do use a wide variety of similar drugs in the veterinary world, but the doses differ. So I'll give you an example. Mobic or meloxicam, okay? Human formulations are 7.5 milligrams or 15 milligrams. In the veterinary world, we use 0.5 milligrams or 1.5 milligrams. So it's a massive difference. So yes, you can use them, but you need to speak to your vet to formulate the correct dose for you. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, but definitely we do use human meds, and we write out scripts that you can get from your pharmacy.
That's interesting. Okay. All right, so let's talk more specifically. I'm going to relate to dogs because it's easy. And if the audience have questions related to other pets, they're more than welcome to send through the questions and ask. So just so we can get the conversation going, let's talk about dogs. So one of the questions that came to my mind before about my dog, and I want you to please expand and elaborate. So will I have time, money, training abilities, grooming abilities? These are type of questions. Purchasing food, diets, and all this kind of stuff. Toys, because I know once they're a puppy, you need to, get them toys or they get bored really quick. So these are the kind of questions that went to my mind. What else should a person ask, like vet checks?
Yeah, definitely. Look, you definitely need time to take out to visit a vet, okay? A lot of the time people just acquire puppies from backyard breeders and they come with a lot of problems. So vet check, I would probably say if it's a puppy, definitely as soon as you buy him within the first 2 weeks, take him to a veterinary clinic and get him attended to, because in that first period he'll probably need a vaccine, number one, and in that time frame you can find out exactly where he stands medically. The other thing is time out for him. If you can't dedicate a specific amount of time per week for your pet, I will probably not lean towards the dog category that much.
So for a medium to large dog, how much walking time do they need a day?
If we say, for example, a German Shepherd, between 30 minutes to an hour every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 30 minutes to an hour. And I mean, some people go, oh, I'll take him out for a 5-hour walk on one day. No, it doesn't work that way. You need to stimulate him, because that's how they vandalize. You know, before I even became a vet, it's a bit of a confession. Before I became a vet, I went and I bought a Labrador. I didn't know much about them. You know, I like dogs. I've always grown up with little dogs, so I wanted a big dog. And what I did was I got this Labrador, and he literally tore my house to bits. He broke 2 colour-bond fences and actually ate part of a gyprock wall. It was a nightmare. And the reason being is because I didn't have enough time. I was still a school student, didn't have enough time to take him out every day for a walk and get that energy out of him. One of our uni lecturers used to say, a tired dog is a happy dog. All right, so if you can expend that energy for them, then they're going to be happy. And that's ultimately what you need to achieve. Apart from, so back to the initial question, sorry, Mina. So the other thing that you need to do is medically care for them. So if you have a child, you want to make sure that they are covered for everything, all right? So vaccines are a must. You definitely need to vaccine your dog every year, because if they get a parvoviral infection, you're facing either thousands of dollars in medical fees, or unfortunately the dog passing away. Flea treatment and heartworming. All these are things that you need to take into account, and you should research this before acquiring a pet. And yeah, that's all I'd have to say.
Okay,
right
so that brings me to my number one question, and I think this is a problem amongst a lot of pet owners. So people get excited when they see puppies. Puppies are cute.
Of course.
But they don't stay puppies
For long,
their
yeah.
whole life.
Yeah.
So do you recommend that people do research on what this puppy will look like once it reaches adult
100%.
adult stage?
100%. And I think that goes back to, you remember when you said, when I went and got my puppy, I went and I saw the parents? That goes back to that. When you see what the parents look like and how they are when they're fully grown, it definitely affects whether or not you're more likely to keep this dog long term. One of the worst things that I see personally is a lot of people give each other as gifts puppies during Christmas. And then as this puppy gets older, they care for them, their needs start to get bigger, they become more affectionate, and they start to have different types of obsessive compulsive disorders. And then that's when people say, oh no, I can't keep this dog. And that's when shelters start to fill up. For people who don't think they can handle that, that's when I advise acquiring an older dog, okay? And some older dogs are beautiful pets, pets. Yeah.
Okay. So one must, before making this decision, they must know what they want. Do they want a small dog?
100%,
Do
yeah.
they want a medium dog, or do they want a large dog? And when buying a puppy, they need to understand that this puppy will eventually grow.
Definitely. Look at the parents.
And won't be cute anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, like a puppy will only be a puppy for a maximum of 6-7 months, all right? I mean, in terms of body size, but they'll be a puppy in mentality for 2 years, all right? It's just like humans, you know? You grow older, but you're still a teenager, mid-20s, you know? But that's what happens. So before you acquire that puppy, see how big they're going to be, whether their size and their activity level is going to fit your lifestyle.
Okay. All right. We're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. So a reminder to our audience, the phone number is 0416 551 292. Unless you ask, you'll never know the answers to your question. So please ask us a question. Don't be shy. And remember, you'll remain anonymous if you want to. So please send us your questions and get your answers tonight on the show. Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi, and welcome back to Ask. Tonight's episode, we're talking about Pet Care 101, advice on before buying a pet or while having a pet. So we're going to continue our discussion. So there are actually a couple of questions that just came in while we're on break from audience members. One of them's asking, is it harsh to leave your pet to sleep outside during the winter?
Look, as long as they have some form of covered area, because you don't want to leave them outside in the rain to get muddy, you know. Dogs can get viral infections as well. So as long as they have some form of, you know, shelter, it should be fine. Dogs. we kind of spoil our pets, okay? They do feel cold, so as long as they have shelter, a little kennel, a couple of blankets, they should be fine.
Okay. I remember when I first bought my dog, the first 8 months, he slept inside in the laundry. Then he became big in size and
Yeah.
became tough.
Yeah.
So I started to let him outside.
And then he cried.
Until he started giving my neighbors the hell, so I had to bring him back into the laundry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They train, and what happens is a dog will get accustomed to a certain style of living, and then that becomes their norm.
Okay. Second question that came in from an audience member, they're asking, is it a must that pets have a daily routine like we do?
Look, routine is good within certain limits. So, for example, feeding a dog once a day or twice a day is good. It makes them, it's part of their training, let's just say. But going outside that routine is also good. So if we're saying routine in terms of where to sleep, routine in terms of times of eating, routine in terms of training, routine in terms of discipline, then that's perfect. But if we're talking about his life is going to be 100% routine, apply it to your life. You want a little bit of change here and there.
So I didn't mean for it, but so I bring my dog inside from the backyard at midnight every night to go into the laundry to sleep. Now he's reached the point, once I open the back sliding door, he walks straight to the laundry.
They get accustomed to it. Yeah.
I don't even tell him.
It is part of his training.
Yeah. Okay, another question that just came in from an audience member. They're asking, how do I stop my dog from jumping on friends that come over?
Right, that's a very common dilemma with all dogs.
Yeah.
I think you had that problem as well.
Still do.
So the reason dogs jump is because they're overly excited, okay, to meet someone. You, friends, whatever. The number one factor is to actually teach against this kind of behavior is, number one, ignore them. A lot of the time when you push the dog down, you're actually reinforcing that behavior. They understand, oh, you know, if I jump up, I'm going to get acknowledged that I'm here. So a lot of the time is you just turn aside and just ignore him and his presence. And when he's calm and sitting down, that's when you give him attention. And he'll learn that jumping gets you nowhere. I mean, it's long and tedious and it'll take weeks before you actually achieve this result. But surely enough, you will get a result.
Okay. So how does one encourage the dog to listen? So treats?
So look, there are, again, this goes back to the breed of dog. There are some dogs that are extremely food motivated. So for example, you have your Labradors, your Kelpies, your Staffies. They love food, okay? As soon as you reward them for good behavior with food, they're just going to keep doing it over and over and over again. When I was teaching my Kelpie how to roll, the first 3 times I gave him treats, and then he just kept on rolling like along the carpet. And then he was expecting a treat every time he rolled. And then when he didn't get it, he just rolled again, thinking, oh, maybe this time. Dogs that are not really food orientated are a bit harder to train, and they're more associated with affection and physical reward like patting and oh, good boy, you know, reinforcing.
Okay. I heard that, I've actually read this somewhere, where a person trained their dog saying the same word, good boy, but in different tones.
Yeah.
Good boy.
Definitely.
Good boy. And the dog differentiated that one he's being bad and one he's being good.
So, for example, bull terriers, they're the ones that have that little concave. They do have a genetic mutation, for example, that sometimes the albino ones can be a bit deaf. And what happens is, they can, a lot of the time, they need special homes. Okay, not everyone can train a deaf dog. So what happens is they actually train them with hand cues. All right. So for example, sit and lie down, and they do it, and they do it better than most dogs. So a dog doesn't really need a verbal cue as much as some form of reinforcement, whether visual, auditory, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, another question that came in from an audience member. They're asking, how do I stop my dog from barking unnecessarily?
That's a bit, look, most dogs bark for a reason.
I think this is the $1 million question.
Yeah, this is the, look, I mean, this is definitely the $1 million question, and we see it, back in the day, in Sydney, they used to do something called debarking, where they actually surgically go in and cut the vocal cords. This is illegal now. but because of this exact problem. Most dogs bark for a certain reason. My dogs bark because we have a bat tree at the back, and whenever they see a bat fly, they're barking at that, or cats, or at each other. Before you try and stop the dog from barking, you have to find out the reason of his barking. Once you eliminate that reason or accustom him to that exact reason as to why he is barking, then that should stop automatically. So for example, when my dogs were barking at a cat, I then introduced them to my cats and got cats around the backyard as a normal thing, and they stopped barking to that. When they bark, for example, because of a bird, you know, it's natural for them to be territorial, okay? So you have to slowly accustom them to not bark at certain cues.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could, you know, stop that, that is the $1 million question, but unfortunately I can't. You need to get to the root of the problem first before you address the symptom.
Okay. I want to talk about desexing. Yeah. Why I want to talk about it is because I remember when I first took my dog to the vet, the first question he asked me, do you want to breed from him? I said no. He said, I recommend you desex your dog. I said, why? They said, because your dog has the potential, not just my dog, but dogs in general have the potential to develop a testicular cancer.
Definitely.
So he definitely recommended that I desex my dog. So let's talk more about desexing and why it's important.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's start with male dogs. Male dogs, you have a lot more leeway in terms of time frame for desexing. What happens is testosterone is released by the testes, and you can get testicular cancers, increases the potential to get testicular cancers, number one, as well as prostatic hyperplasia, which means your prostate increases in size and sometimes gets abscessed. There are some studies that show that it increases the occurrence of prostate cancer as well, but it's not definitive. So definitely health-wise, desexing is definitely beneficial. In terms of a lot of people that I speak to, they say, oh, you know, if I desex my male dog, he'll lose his you know, that little imph of being a male. It's not like that. It's not like that. Most of the time, they notice this straight after the surgery, and the reason they're down is they've just come out of surgery. If you imagine yourself coming out of surgery, it's not the best thing. Most dogs go home on the same day that they have this procedure, and so they're a little bit upset, a little bit drowsy, you know, probably go off food for a day or two. That's normal, okay? But what tends to happen is even after desexing, testosterone levels stay at a peak for about 30 to 40 days. And that's when you see the decline, okay, in say, for example, male marking behavior. So most males like to pee on every tree, all right? That'll decrease with testosterone. And the aggression to other males, okay, can definitely start to decrease as well. With females, this is where it's actually life-threatening. Dogs, as you know, cycle twice a year, okay, so they have the equivalent of their period twice a year. And that's when they're ready to bear kids. Dogs reach sexual maturity quite early, so usually between 8 to 10 months is their first period. And what tends to happen is every time they have a period, their body is automatically prepped for childbearing and pregnancy. The dog pregnancy period from day 0 to when they're supposed to deliver is 63 days. Okay, so it's pretty quick. It's about just over 2 months. For about 30 of those days, for about a whole month, they have a pseudo-pregnancy, regardless whether pregnant or not. And what that involves is the cervix closing and that uterus being ready to have babies, having a litter. Now, sometimes they can have a sterile or a bacterial infection in that uterus, and it will go undetected for 30 days because that uterus, the cervix is closed, nothing can come out, and it'll just keep growing as if it was just a puppy. And what tends to happen, so this is known as a pyometra, or an infected uterus. And that becomes life-threatening for a couple of reasons. Number one, you have inflammatory mediators flowing all around your body, a huge white cell count. I mean, I'm going a bit into a medical term here, but that can damage your kidney, okay? It can cause real severe problems, and I've seen dogs pass away from it, okay? So desexing a non-breeding female is essential, and as early as possible, because the likelihood of, I've seen pyometra happen in 8 months. Okay?
Wow.
So it's definitely worth desexing. The other thing is, if you don't desex them, they get increased risk of mammary tumors, which is the equivalent of breast cancer, all right? And they get ovarian cancers and cysts as well, which is detrimental to their health. So females, if you're not breeding that female, desex, desex, desex.
Okay. You actually reminded me of something when you said the peeing on the tree. One time I went bushwalking with my dog, and every 5 minutes he'll stop and pee. On the way back, it got really dark to the point where I couldn't see my way back home. And he was off the leash and he was walking in front of me. And I got worried. I was lost and I didn't have phone reception. And I realized he kept looking back at me and, telling me it's okay. I know.
Yeah, a lot of the time they mark via urine their territory, as well as when they defecate, they have anal glands that secrete pheromones as well.
That important.
Look, a lot of the time. So if you ever have a dog that you don't want to lose, and if he runs out, you want to bring him back, you definitely need to micro him, because it's just a safety measure that you can get him back. Because what will happen is, you remember when you microchipped Frankie, you filled in a form with your because when puppies and kittens are born, they're immuno-naive. The only form of immunity they have is from the colostrum, which is the milk that they drink from their mother. Initially, what happens is they have a spike in the amount of antibodies, but that weans down pretty quickly. And then the first vaccine, all right, covers some dogs, but some dogs, the maternal antibody fights against this vaccine and it kills it. Then again, at the second vaccine, which is between 8 to 10 weeks of age, and then again, the same thing with the third shot, which is between 12 to 14 weeks of age. And what tends to happen is this. Once you've vaccinated them, there's 3 different types of vaccines as well. For dogs that are pretty much at home plus backyard, indoor dogs, a C3 is fine, and that covers against parvovirus, infectious hepatitis, and canine distemper. And they're 3 fatal viruses that dogs can get. The next level up is for dogs that go to local dog parks, go to the beach every now and then. And that covers the first 3 fatal viruses plus 2 strains of kennel cough, all right? And that stops them from getting a respiratory bug that dogs can get from each other. The next one up from that is pretty much for dogs who go farmlands, rivers, go swimming in contaminated water, and that covers for further things like leptospira and coronavirus. So again, you need to know which level of protection your dog needs.
So before taking him out to a park, they need the 3?
Yeah, so as a puppy, before you take your dog out to a park, you should get 3 puppy vaccines, okay? The reason being is that after the first 2 vaccines, they can probably interact with other vaccinated dogs, but they're still immuno-naive to active viruses in the environment. So what you do is wait till the 3rd vaccine and then take them out for walks.
Okay. We just got a question that just came in from an audience member. They're asking, they're saying, I bought a house and the previous owners were breeding snakes. Should I be worried that there are eggs around?
Look, I mean, without having an adult snake there, then probably no, because an egg's not going to hatch, unless it's under ideal conditions. And if they're breeding snakes, I'm pretty sure they would have taken everything with them. Most snake breeders are very, disciplined in that matter.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, I wanted to ask how important are vet checkups or visiting your vet? Because I remember a long time ago when my parents bought us a dog, we never went to a vet. They fed him home food and it wasn't a routine for us. But when I bought this dog, I became more conscious about it, and it's a responsibility. So how important are vet checkups
Look,
and visits?
yeah. Look, the reason I probably emphasize visiting the vet every year, reason being is this. Like I said earlier, as a puppy, the vet will pick up on health cues that you may have missed. Some puppies are born with heart defects, okay? And you won't notice any abnormality until they're about a year old. But the earlier you can catch it, the quicker you can treat it. And then the reason it's good to come every year for a booster is because there are boosters out there that are triannually, meaning every 3 years. You can just give a vaccine every 3 years. But personally, I don't like them for the reason that I don't get to see the dog every year. And cost-wise, you're not saving yourself much money as well because it's just the 3 years as one shot. But the reason I don't like it is that I don't get to see the dog and how it progresses. And if anything goes, under the radar for you, then we won't catch it until 3 years. All right. So it's extremely important to take your dog regularly to the vet, meaning healthy or not. Okay, every year, and definitely whenever you're suspicious of something going on, like. Dogs will never come and speak to you and say, "Oh, I'm not feeling well," but they'll show you, for example, he'll be more lethargic, okay, not as bright and happy. He's vomiting more often. His poo is really, really sloppy, and it's starting to smell different. Things like that. Or whenever you get these cues, definitely take him, because the best case scenario is nothing's really wrong. Worst case scenario, you've picked up something quite early.
Yeah. Okay. We have time for one more question. And I've left the most important question till last because I want this to be fresh in the minds of the viewers.
Yep.
Because a lot of people have this problem. What foods, let's talk about both dogs and cats. What foods should you not give to your dog and
definitely, yeah.
cat?
That's a good question. Okay, so things that will kill your dog. Panadol, Nurofen. I can't say that enough. Because a lot of people say, "Oh no, he was not looking good. He looked like he was pain. I gave him." It'll kill your dog. That's you've just set yourself by trying to save yourself a couple of $100 in terms of vet fees. You've caused yourself thousands of dollars in vet fees. Onions, garlic, chocolate definitely, and Easter coming. A lot of dogs get into chocolate and then they have to be rushed to emergency, and it's really messy. Grapes. Garlic and funny, the actual sweetener in Diet Coke is toxic to dogs.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh, the other thing for cats, lilies, the plant, the flower, lilies cause kidney failure in cats, so I would stay clear of them.
Sure. Look, before we finish, I want to ask you something because there's a video on YouTube that went viral about cats, how they placed cucumbers behind them. You must have seen it.
Yeah.
Thousands of our audience members must have seen this video. So it went viral in the past few months. And they've been placing cucumbers, the owners were placing cucumbers behind the cat while it's feeding. And when the cat turns around, sees the cucumber, they just leap and jump out of fear.
Look, again, this is my hypothesis. I don't know why they've done that. It's pretty funny to me when I saw it. But one of my actual co-workers thinks it could be associated with the way that the cucumber looks and where they put it and placed it, resembling a snake. And so cats and dogs instinctually are afraid of snakes. So yeah, that's why they jump and freak out and try not to touch it.
Yeah.
That's my hypothesis. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that.
Okay, sounds reasonable. That was just a funny video that just went viral. So people were just doing pranks on their cats and putting it.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I know we mentioned that chocolate is no good for dogs.
Right.
I know a lot of friends of mine who says, you know what, my dog eats everything, even chocolate. They say it specifically, even chocolate, and
so
nothing happens to him.
What tends to happen is small amounts of chocolate, let's put it this way. If you were feeding your dog, for example, your dog is about 30, 35 kilos, you would have to give him maybe a bar of chocolate about this big before you see clinical signs. But if you gave him a small little bit of chocolate, that has cumulative effects on his internal organs. And you won't notice it until maybe a year or so down the track, or 2 or 3 years down. And then incidentally, say for example, we do a blood test and find liver and kidney enzymes through the roof. And then you'll be like, how did this happen? And that's why now we know that there is ingredients in chocolate and garlic and onion that cause specific organ dysfunction. Again, it's specific to the dog at how much will cause clinical signs. So you may give 10 grapes to a dog and nothing happens, and 1 grape to another small dog and something happens.
Okay, maybe if we give them fasting chocolate, it should be fine. That's all we have for tonight's show, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you, and it's good, having you to give advice to people out there who are interested to buy a dog or pet, or who have a pet and don't know what they need the further advice.
Definitely, yeah, and visit your vets. Yeah, definitely. Every district has a vet, so there's no real excuse.
Thank you, and thank you to our audience member to tuned in to tonight's show and sending your questions. I'm Mina Ibrahim from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.